What you are about to hear is the story of Luc and Sophie, a love born in the shadows of occupied Paris where danger and devotion intertwine. In a world filled with war and betrayal, they fight for each stolen moment, defying fate for a love that could be their salvation or their undoing. In a small, dimly lit cafe hidden on a quiet street in occupied Paris, the air is thick with the scent of coffee and lingering tension. Resistance fighters and those fleeing Nazi persecution use this cafe as a clandestine meeting point, a sanctuary of sorts in a city gripped by fear. It is here that Luc, a young French resistance fighter with eyes hardened by the horrors of war, first meets Sophie, a woman with a haunted gaze and a fragile air of grace. She is in hiding, fearful of the Gestapo, yet driven by a fierce desire to survive. Luc's mission is simple: deliver a message to a contact, then leave. But as he enters the cafe and spots Sophie seated in a shadowed corner, everything changes. There's a spark between them, a moment of understanding that passes without words. Luc is immediately drawn to her, sensing a kindred spirit who, like him, has lost so much yet clings to hope. Sophie, though wary, feels a pull toward him, something deep and unexplainable that she hasn't felt in years. They share a few brief words as Luc takes a seat at her table, using small talk to deflect suspicion. His voice is low, steady, and Sophie finds herself captivated by the way he speaks, as if he carries the weight of Paris on his shoulders. When she nervously glances over her shoulder, Luc places a reassuring hand on hers, a brief touch that sends warmth through her. He leans in close, whispering, "They don't know you're here. I won't let them find you." Days pass, and Luc finds excuses to return to the cafe. Each time, he looks for her, his heart quickening at the sight of her seated in the shadows, always wary, yet waiting for him. Their connection grows with every whispered conversation, every shared glance. Sophie learns that Luc risks his life each night, fighting in the shadows to free France, and Luc learns that Sophie, though fearful, has the courage to defy the terror that hunts her. Their love blossoms quietly, urgently, in the safety of that dimly lit cafe. But they both know that any slip, any sign of familiarity, could betray them. The Nazis are everywhere, and traitors hide among friends. Every moment they spend together feels stolen, borrowed from a world that doesn't belong to them. Yet, as they share whispered dreams of a free France and a future beyond the war, they know that they are in too deep. But Luc is soon called to a dangerous mission, one that could expose them both. The fear of leaving her unprotected gnaws at him, but Sophie, holding his hand tightly, whispers, "I will wait. I'll be here, no matter what." As he kisses her, the taste of hope mingling with fear, they both understand that this might be their last moment together. With one final look, Luc disappears into the night, leaving Sophie to the shadows and the haunting quiet of the cafe. They are bound now by more than love, by the shared risk, by a promise made in a world that could end for either of them at any moment. The days are long and agonizing for Sophie as she waits in the cafe, her heart a mix of fear and hope, wondering if Luc will return. Each night, she sits at the corner table, her eyes scanning the door with every chime, but it remains empty. Rumors of Gestapo crackdowns spread, and whispers of betrayal weave through the city like a chilling wind. In the shadows, fear grows as even the bravest resistance fighters begin to fall. At last, one cold evening, Luc appears worn and weary. The sight of him fills Sophie with relief, and though their embrace is quick and subtle, it is charged with an intensity that words cannot capture. Luc's mission was successful, but it was not without sacrifice. He's lost comrades, seen betrayal firsthand, and narrowly escaped death. His eyes, once so full of fire, are now shattered by the things he's seen. They speak in hushed tones, leaning close, their hands touching beneath the table. Luc tells her of the mission, of traitors among them, and Sophie's face goes pale. Luc warns her to be careful, not to trust anyone, and her eyes brim with tears as she realizes the risks he takes just to see her. "Luc," she whispers, "if they find us together, it will mean death for us both." But Luc is resolute. "I would rather face death with you, Sophie, than live a life of silence and fear without you." They know the dangers, yet their love is stronger than reason, binding them together even as the world falls apart. However, the whispers of betrayal creep closer, casting a dark shadow over their already precarious lives. One night, a fellow resistance fighter named Etienne arrives at the café, his demeanor shifty, his words filled with vague warnings about loose ends and traitors hiding in plain sight. Luc's instincts flare with distrust. He senses that Etienne is not who he appears to be, that he might be the traitor they've feared. Days later, Luc's suspicions are confirmed when he narrowly escapes an ambush set by the Gestapo. He realizes with a sinking heart that someone close to him, someone who knows of his connection to Sophie, has betrayed them. Desperate to protect her, he meets with Sophie in secret, his voice thick with urgency. "We can't stay here, Sophie. We're no longer safe." Sophie, though terrified, nods in understanding, her resolve solidified by her love for him. Luc suggests that they find refuge outside the city, where the Gestapo's reach might not be as relentless. They know it's a risk, and that abandoning the resistance could mean losing their only chance to fight for a free France. But the thought of losing each other is more than they can bear. As they plan their escape, they share one last tender moment in the café, their secret world. Luc takes her hand, pressing a soft kiss to her fingers. "If anything happens to me, promise you'll survive, promise you'll live." But Sophie shakes her head, her voice barely a whisper. "Not without you, Luc." They leave that night, their hearts bound by both love and fear, their lives teetering on the edge as they step into the unknown. Under the cover of night, Luc and Sophie make their way through the deserted streets of Paris, slipping past dark alleys and shadowed doorways. The Gestapo has tightened its grip, and every movement feels like a step closer to danger. They find refuge in an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of the city, a place where the city lights are dim and the silence wraps around them like a shroud. Here they breathe a momentary sigh of relief, holding each other close, grateful to have escaped for now. But the reality of their situation looms heavily. The resistance has lost a valuable fighter in Luc, and Sophie, despite her love, feels the weight of the sacrifices they've made. Luc can see the fear in her eyes, the quiet resignation that has crept into her gaze. He knows that hiding forever isn't an option. The resistance needs him, and Sophie's safety is never guaranteed as long as the Gestapo is searching for him. One fateful night, Luc hears a whisper on the wind, a message from a former comrade pleading for his return, asking for his help in one final mission that could shift the tide of the war. He knows it's dangerous, that it's likely a one-way mission, but he also knows that his purpose and duty pull him back, even if it means leaving Sophie behind. When he tells her, Sophie's heart shatters. "You can't go back, Luc," she begs, clutching his hands as tears stream down her face. "If you go, you may never come back to me." But Luc, his voice trembling with emotion, tells her, "I can't live in hiding, knowing I could have done something to change the future. I need you to understand, Sophie. I do this for you, for us, for a world where we can live without fear." She sees the resolve in his eyes, the burden he carries, and though it breaks her heart, she knows she cannot hold him back. "Then I'll wait for you, Luc," she whispers, her voice filled with quiet strength. No matter how long, I'll be here. They share a final searing kiss, their love more powerful than words, as they say goodbye, uncertain if they will ever meet again. As dawn breaks, Luc vanishes into the shadows, leaving Sophie alone in the farmhouse, clutching the memory of his embrace. Days turn to weeks, then months. Sophie waits, her heart aching, her hope fading with each passing day. She spends her days in the cough, remembering every moment they shared, his voice echoing in her mind, his laughter a distant memory. The war rages on, and news of fallen fighters reaches her ears, each time bringing a pang of terror, wondering if Luc is among them. Finally, one rainy afternoon, as Sophie sits in the familiar corner of the cough, a figure appears in the doorway, soaked and weary. Her heart stops as she realizes it's Luc, alive, though changed. His eyes meet hers across the room, and in that instant, every fear, every longing melts away. She runs to him, and he gathers her into his arms, holding her as if he would never let go. In that dimly lit cough, amid the whispers of resistance fighters and the ever-present danger, they find their sanctuary. Against all odds, they have survived, their love a quiet act of rebellion, a light in the darkness of war. And though the future remains uncertain, they know that they will face it together, bound by a love that has endured, a love that will forever hold them close.